In this real side experience, I would find myself in a kind of school setting, among other students of an age range that I would have placed in the late teens possibly. As we all are aware of by now, there exists on the real side extensive UNUversal UNUversities, where all those deciding to become more aware and intending to recognize the true reality, the isness life is, receive further sharings and awareness bolstering lessons from the real guides, and from other individuals also in a teaching capacity, or a sharing capacity I should say, who are tasked and entrusted, and with the requisite awareness and agreement for the position. For the process of getting through a creation, of facing the whole of life and the personal self, is quite the journey. It is continuous and unceasing, as long as we maintain our drive and determination to soldier on. And an expression of it are these real side UNUversities, that may eventually with agreement become so on the physical level. But on this occasion, although I have had many an experience with these UNUversities, and including the dark force replicated fakes, as the controllers never miss an opportunity to spew forth their own creations and counterfeits, in order to glean agreement, steal focus, claim attention, and thus secure their tap lines. This school was neither the genuine, real UNUversities, or the dark force deceptive versions. As I said, part of the process is to face the whole of life, the whole of creation, the whole of the consciousness then that effects creation as it currently stands in this new moment. For to become fully aware, to complete our awareness, we must be fully aware of our real awareness, and everything in creation that stems from an overall consciousness, that this overall awareness animates and is through. So to become fully aware, to complete our awareness, must have with it the completion of the facing of everything, the unveiling of everything that is creation, that this all awareness animates the consciousness that overall effects. For we all are in the same life, we all are the same life, we all are this same awareness, so we must all be this one overall consciousness. A consciousness construction we then face and become fully aware of, as opposed to just sitting with our own personal self-consciousness and content with what we are aware of in regards to its construction, which for A personal self-convinced, one-dimensional individual would simply be that which it has experienced in its current lifetime, unconscious of anything of all the other lifetimes lived, and all the lifetimes lived throughout the personal selves of the overall consciousness, as the personal self can only be aware of the references it has collated in its current lifetime, with its memory body like a computer that is replaced with a new computer every lifetime around. So really, only through the real awareness can awareness be afforded of anything other than the current lifetime of experiences, as unless an individual explores more than the astral body, the seat of sensations, and so where few will venture beyond, then even the creational files of lifetimes on the causal will be inaccessible, and with an individual limiting themselves to just the personal self, they can't then become aware of much beyond their own individual consciousness, as they are in agreement with exclusively their own unique consciousness construction, and limited then to just the effects of that, although with agreements and attachments intermingled throughout the overall consciousness. Personal self-immersed individuals are never locked into their own exclusive private simulations, and so their real side experiences, although limited to their consciousness as it currently stands, will include the infusion of others and their creations also. So stepping into the real awareness is a step beyond the individual consciousness, and an endless exploration of the entirety of creation that the overall consciousness is effecting now, an overall consciousness effect that we must face and become aware of, as everything that has ever been decided and agreed to, a consciousness we are a part of, is culminated in the effect of itself, in the nowness of the real awareness isness position, including then every idea and creation and lifetime that is the consciousness overall, that is the simulation as it currently stands, all the experiences, all the effects, the ideas, lifetimes of the overall consciousness then we must face and go through as we become more aware, all available in the nowness of the is. And although we are facing it all, we can't possibly expect that the personal self is shown everything, as we are dealing with everything that is the overall consciousness of ideas, and also as we are all this overall awareness, and as such the consciousness overall is everybody's, and only the personal self considers the idea of separation and individuality, so can we be shown any lifetime, any position, any creation of a consciousness, as the real awareness decides what is necessary for not just the personal self to see, but that which may benefit others, if what is seen is then shared. So the real side experiences may be created by the real guides to impart something that the personal self needs to see to assist its understanding and recognition, or they are the ideas, the experiences, the decided happenings in creation that we go through as we go about our awareness process that must have us face everything. This school, then, was just a decided and agreed to simulation of occurrence in creation, as everything in creation must be. It could have been in any dimension or time phase, any planet or literal life level. The school seemed similar enough to the design of those we would find on Earth, the students looking very human. Standardized schooling systems are generally made for control purposes, for indoctrination, literalization, to keep everyone locked into the one-dimensional surface world, and limit then awareness of anything beyond it. For control can only be so if there is agreement to it, if there is a focus on the controlling ideas and systems created, and if everyone is kept boxed into a one-dimensional consideration and doesn't explore beyond the boundaries the controllers have established, as they must manage the consciousness of those they suppress if they wish to have a simulation of their design. This then seems a standard across creation, of those deciding to control, suppressing, limiting, of managing the consciousness of those they are imposing upon, utilizing schooling systems to do so, and marketing them as beneficial that agreement be maintained that such are seemingly essential. This was a similar situation here. The students, in their late teens, as I said, were not only very heavily restricted and literalized, but the punishments for insubordination very harsh and violent, but accepted among the students as though this was all they knew, very likely brought up in such a world where the structure of it that they enter, for them, is the normal. Only if a change occurs during a lifetime can the difference be compared and determined as to if they are for better or worse. But if entering into a lifetime, whatever any child walks into, for them it must be the normal, as they have no comparison with anything else. Also it was so, that not only was this a very harsh and suppressive environment, but that in this dimension or world no individual was allowed to leave the schools. So not only did they receive their indoctrination into whatever the controlling ideas of that dimension were, and it was indeed a controlled world not dissimilar to our own, and very likely under the boot of the reptilians, but also that all students took up residence in the buildings. This seemed to be an overall situation with this world, that all the population were never allowed to leave the buildings, and this was in fact for their own safety, safety provided, even as controlled as they were, and as human farmed as they equally were. At this moment, I was standing in my real awareness, aside from this simulated situation, not engaging with the ideas of it that I could feature in it, so just observing what was taking place and receiving these impressions through my real awareness position of this danger that lurked beyond all buildings that no individual on this planet could move beyond. I could have just impressioned the source of the danger, or moved my view and observed still from this real awareness position aside from the simulation as to what this threat might be, without the need to agree with the ideas of it, and then be featuring in it and subject to the effects through my personal self. But very often the intensity of the experiences is more so through the personal self-involvement, and more likely recollected on waking, or it's very much like watching a movie with indifference and almost disinterest in a way from the real awareness position. And so the school scene faded, and now I was outside, in utter darkness, anything of the environment hard to discern, but everything seemed abandoned, derelict, almost as though most of the planet had been left to its own devices, and only certain functioning buildings established that housed the population of this planet. There seemed to be a technology in operation that prevented the threat that existed beyond the buildings of sanctitude from encroaching upon them, and as I wandered through the gloom, I would soon determine that everywhere beyond the buildings of safety was awash with monsters, twisted creatures, and distorted body types, and all exuding malicious ill intent. My impression was that yes, this was an overall controlled planet, one among endless versions where control is prevalent, where the control and agreement with restriction then compounds the overall consciousness, and the result then is a deteriorating simulator, what with the consciousness always affecting the simulator, so a restriction equates to a simulator impacting in on itself. A feature of this deterioration of the growing unconsciousness and unawareness is the blackness that the simulator progressively becomes shrouded with, the black holes sucking in matter and planets, etc., not so apparent to those that have had adjustments to their personal self-vehicles that conceal the simulator as it actually currently is, and so they see a kind of a faked controller created overlap, but apparent is the darkness for those who see creation from the real awareness view, or from a personal view that hasn't had this cyberspace agreed to overlap filtered over everything. And although this darkness here then suggested this feature of a simulator spiraling into demise, as was my impression, it wasn't just a darkness that I could only discern through the real awareness. For the people here, although still controlled, all were able to perceive this darkness, and so they either were a species that lacked this additional cyberspace overlap filter, or that this was a view of a planet in some dimension or other at a stage far later along the agreed upon simulator deterioration stages, to the extent that it was so obvious and prevalent a darkness that no amount of filtering could conceal. For despite this cyberspace overlap for humans, the sky is still the indication of this darkness, a blackness at night where once the skies were full of light and colour. But this darkness also seemed to herald the presence of distorted, twisted, mutant beings. Can it be that this was a planet that went along similar lines to what the controllers intend for the Earth, or maybe even a future view of this planet, although my impression was that it was rather another dimensional world, that technology was brought to bear, that caused massive body-vehicle distortion, and a twisting of a consciousness that caused also aggressive inclinations. A situation that affected perhaps a proportion of the population, and the others were contained into the buildings, which had a means of protection from these malformed people, and naturally then a situation those controllers may have created, but very likely blamed on another source, and provided their solution for what was then their own created situation, a solution of containment which was more restriction, control, and regulation in fact, so everything according to a controller's plans, I would say. There is also the possibility that as the simulator continues to decay, that there is a fraying between the literal life levels, that as agreement to distortion continues, so the physical level becomes far closer in frequency terms to that of the lower astral, and that a convergence may be so that allows that which dwells in the lower astral to enter the physical directly without needing conduits and other means. For there is much by way of references in texts that speak of end times, where the world is full of demons. Perhaps these were recounted experiences, recollected when simulators entered this stage of demise before. But either option, basically a distorted, more unsavory overall experience due to agreements to restricting and controlling distorted ideas that make such a simulated shared reality so, with the very apparent darkness that a simulator becomes when it's entering its death spiral, and these mutated beings, whatever they might be, all an expression of this distortion, and they would now attack me, as I was featuring in the effects, and open then to being the recipient of such. But after a little chasing back and forth, I simply retracted my agreement from the idea that was this overall simulated situation, moved into my real awareness position, and moved then beyond the reach of the bewildered creatures.
Thanks, Kevin. The gradual indoctrination, they just do it gradually, and then it becomes a standard to be oppressed, and then each generation just takes it as, like these kids in your experience, it's a standard to be controlled, and standard to be punished if you go outside the lines. And then there's the part where, the public assumes that the government or the controllers would take care of things. That's part of this psychological position that they're putting people in. And then they give people the appearance of freedom. That's another part of it. The controllers give the appearance of freedom. They let people walk around, do things, but it's all under the eyes of their control. Containment. And said solution of, their solution is of containment. Well, anyway, it's just, I see where this is going with the standardization of control and restriction. And it's a gradual process, and that's what's been going on here.
Who are the controllers?
There's many, many controllers here. It's a hierarchy, you could say, but you could say the dark forces have a hierarchy, but there's a lot going on, a lot of involvement from different groups. But just a blanket, I just use a blanket statement like controllers. It could be the elites, the cabal, the reptilians, the Cal and the Ranjan, whoever. It's a whatever it is, however it's manifested in creation, it's a control and restriction.
Are we talking about heavenly controls or the physical world controls?
Creation, physical, astral, dimensional, everything. Yeah, as if you're listening to Kevin's experiences, it's all, creation is collapsing, it's on itself, and it's becoming dark, and demons are coming. It's just the whole of creation, not just physical or astral.
So what you're saying is that these dark holes that are collapsing on themselves, that's happening right now?
Just about. It's the unconsciousness is creating these, if you're unconscious about something, you don't see it. So all these things you don't see going on, which is most of the public, it's affecting, there being an effect of it. You can kind of like create it, or any way you want, you can kind of create something around it, but it's that unconsciousness that is creating this effect that people are agreeing to, that's destroying, creation and the whole of creation. The unawareness, unconsciousness, the unawareness.
Kevin, what Kevin is sharing there is what's already going on, but it's if you see it or not. And again, most people don't see it. And that is, you've already got the reptilian shapeshifters here. You got the demons, whatever, the Walking Dead, the controllers, whatever. Anybody that agrees to restriction and deception, and they are actually accomplices. And it can be your mother and your friends and your neighbors, them too. People I knew, etc. Oh, they look really nice. They're really sweet people, aren't they? And they bake you a cake once in a while. But overall, they agree to the deception that's taking place, and this creates the darkness in this creation bubble. It's just like anything. It's just like you have a house, and if somebody keeps letting, doesn't close the door, well, all of a sudden the dust, the dirt, the bugs, everything flies in, and pretty soon the whole house is full of bugs, rats, animals, dust, dirt, spider webs, etc. It's the same thing. The door has been opened through people's agreements. And so when you're seeing the politicians or whoever up there flapping their jaws, or if it's the news or whoever, and they're saying this or that, and they're you know, even if they're not conscious of it, even if they're unconsciously controlled, thinking that, oh, I have really a good job, and you know, I work for the governor in the White House or whatever, they're not seeing that they're accomplices to the shapeshifters that control everything. And so you're not seeing the real side of them, and this is what Kevin, as a great witness, myself and others are exposing for people to see it. And again, see, most people don't want to see it. Most people want their la la land awareness, okay? But there's more than that. That's in creation only. And yes, you start to see all of creation, what's going on. And this is where there's very few people here because they really don't want to see it. They want to pretend that it's all going to be okay, and it's just like going to go away. Okay, just like your house full of spider webs, animals, rats, and you know, all the dust and dirt that's blown in from whatever, leaves and tree branches and whatever. You think it's just going to walk out of the house? No. You have to decide to get it out. You have to decide to cut it off. You have to decide that. The government going to come and sweep your house? Huh? Is your neighbor, the police, your minister, your master, your guru, whatever? You going to do that? You sit there and pray to the Kalam God? No. See, we went through all this baby brain stuff. Now it's time to get real. Face it or not, there's no obligation for anyone to face this or to do anything. But if you don't, you just stay in the same place because you've made that choice. So it's all around you, but you want to see it and do something about it, etc. Become more aware, like the shining sun. Again, the sun is not affected, but people who decide to be affected, they are. And yes, all the darkness, you know, when you look out there and the atmosphere isn't there, because what we think of as a sky is not a sky, as I've said many times, it's atmosphere. That blueness, when you see the sun shining, that's a created atmosphere you're seeing because the sun is shining, because there's oxygen and ozone and whatever, the elements, and it all comes out blue. But realistically, at night, when you don't see it, it's all black, and it shouldn't be black, but it is black because of the eons that this big simulator, it's like a big house that we're in to learn from, because of all the deception and the agreement to it, it's becoming blacker and blacker until it's solid blackness. And those that are left here that are not aware of the real universes, well, this is where you'll be. You'll be in a blackness where you know, you can't create anything because you know what? It's all black. And so that's very real. And I keep letting people know this, but they keep jumping back to their personal lives, thinking that you're going to be able to resolve something in your personal life. You're really not going to be able to, because all life is awareness. And creation is what it is, but you need it as a reference. You need it as a comparison. So again, it's happening right in front of everybody. But they're not seeing it because, again, most people don't want to see it. So this is what we're doing. We're providing something to where people have the opportunity, but again, make sense of it. If you're asking questions, ask yourself, learn to see through it, and again, step up, take the risk to take on the challenge to see through it, and then share something like Kevin's doing that benefits everybody. That makes sense. Not sitting there complaining about it or wondering about it, etc. But be the discoverer and step up. Doesn't matter if you're shy or whatever. Well, if you are, then that's all you're going to be. Or you can be a free being of real light, but you know, that's a big journey and that's scary at the same time. And yes, the reptilians don't like that, so they're going to be attacking you. So you got a lot to go through, just like a soldier, etc. But this opportunity is like nothing else. You're very fortunate that it is here, because look at the rest of the world. It's all a bunch of recirculating deception that people like to agree to, no matter how cute it is. It's not going to work. So there you go. We can all be silent and say nothing, and then there's this lack of communication, and the reptilians would like that. Because once you start to say something, they're right there. They don't like it. All right. So you do have the challenge, and I do too. I'm attacked every day. And so what am I going to do? Stop talking? No, I'm not going to stop. And just like Sheriff Mack, as an example, we just did the Sheriff Mack group. He's not going to stop either. He's not going to just not say nothing because things are happening. People are being injured and hurt. I see the world. You know, the idea of saving the earth is that, hey, there's a lot of wonderful people that are still going to step up, that want to become more aware. And we see them on the real side. We see many, many coming. I have for years and years, but it's like kind of like, where are they? Well, to get that individual to in some way wake up their personal self to their real awareness and respond to that and take the risk, that's huge. So you may see millions coming on the real side, but only one or two make it through to their awareness. Val and I talk to people, and I'm sure many of you do, etc. Oh, people want this or that, or they want to be free or whatever, but when they're shown the opportunity to do that, they back off. They just really want to comply. And it's understandable because it's scary. I see how they are. You know, with this world, it's very scary to say something that doesn't comply with the so-called norm of what is agreeable. And that agreement has been created, that normal standardized agreement has been created by those who, you know, control this human farming planet. These are cattle drivers, is what they are, just like the old herds in the old West, Rawhide, etc. Those old TV programs with Clint Eastwood. It's the same thing. Cattle being driven. This is the whole idea of this planet. This was how it was set up. And so you've got the cattle, the people in the prison yard thinking that, oh, they have rights and they can do this or that because they're told they have rights. It's all nonsense. This is how this creation is. This entire creation bubble all the way up to the mental worlds, other dimensions with the Kalam God, etc. They have taken control. And through agreement, nobody has any power. That's an illusion. Power is an illusion. Yes, there is energy here. That's cause and effect, which creates energy. That's the friction. That's the agitation that I wrote about many times, etc. And that's the cause and effect, or karma, or whatever you want to call it, that occurs in creation. It's set up like that. It's a wake up for us to wake up. And so, for the most part, we have been misinformed. And that is, we don't have the right information, but now we have the real knowledge to go by. And to discover the real knowledge in the universal files, well, you got to learn to see the is. So how many people will do that? But in the meantime, yes, this is a dangerous place, and you decide if you're going to be the risk taker or not, or you're just going to hide away. Well, that's fine. And so you can hide in the darkness because it's becoming darker and darker and darker. And again, you got to figure your way out of here. Nobody can. They cannot drag you. You know, you cannot drag something that lives underground into the light because they're going to run right back into the darkness, aren't they? Yes, those little gophers or whatever, you can drag them out and they'll peek out once in a while, but they're going to run right back underground. And so this is real. You learn to get real with what's happening here and out of your make-believe bubble that you think and you want life to be, which you think is life, which is not. It's creation. And again, so we have a bunch of bubbleheads walking around, which is understandable until they learn to see more than just their personal bubbles and what they think they know. Being the know-it-all goes nowhere. You're actually agreeing to the darkness. Life is not about what the personal self knows. All life is awareness. Now you know this. So we're going to surpass all the silly stuff that we've gone through and get real like the sun shining. But you got to learn to step up and be real with it. And so how are you going to do that? You got to figure that out. And so here's the opportunity, and those that do know are sharing it with you. So again, yes, let's protect those and let's support those that are precious. Yeah, keep an eye, and you have to be creative over there too, because they're forcing the vaccines. Everybody has to be creative with it, and whatever happens is going to happen. And so that's just how it is here. So We're doing something real and beneficial. We're showing people how to become more aware. That's the whole idea. It's not about unfoldment or spiritual growth or all these cute little ideas. Self-realization, God realization. Okay, you've realized yourself, you're who you are, and then there's this God realization idea. That's cute. So there are gods. Okay, you want to look to authorities? Fine, have fun with that. Val and I are going to go over a whole lot of that with the new series that we will be creating starting next week. Ava and I will be making some images for this to present this, and people are welcome. But you will stay muted, and you can you can ask questions. You can put them into the chat. That'll be next Saturday at 10. And then if we decide to answer them, we will. Otherwise, we have a lot to share. And so we are constantly upgrading everything, updating everything for this world to become more aware. That's the whole idea. Not just passing around old information that the world controllers created that sounds good and you think they should do this or that. Well, have fun with that, because that's a form of agreement too. See, just like protesting, you know, when people protest, they're really agreeing to their controllers. They're protesting. It's like, you guys be nice, you know, like we're nice, and you be nice too. So once they get them to agree, which they really don't care to, hey, everybody's agreeable, so everybody's fine in their la la land, well, then you stay unconscious and you grow old. That's it. Nothing gets resolved here. That's cause and effect. Wake up.
The reptilians and the bad guys affecting animals like rats and mice, well, of course, they're, you know, they can affect all the creatures. Look at the fires they're starting and affecting, killing all the animals in the forest, etc. Plus, yeah, the 5G and all the mind control, and they're creating robots and little mosquitoes that fly around, little robotic mosquitoes. So they're doing a lot to affect the creatures too, of course, in doing that. Let's sing the new UU and become more aware through that.
Hello, it's Jeremy. I got something to share.
Jeremy, yes.
Yeah, it was just a view. It was a view. I was in my personal self house, standing on the upper floor, and Duane had called me and started explaining some real references to me, and so on and so on. And what happened was Duane was saying that he was going to come and pick me up from my house, and so I was like, okay. And then he was like, but you need to figure it out. And so I looked up at the ceiling of my personal self house, and it was like, it was almost like it was made of geometrical shapes, but they spiraled upward, but it just looked like it repeated and it repeated. I don't know. It didn't look pleasant to go through, so I didn't explore that area. I went out of the personal self house, and when I walked out of the door, I was essentially naked. And I walked out onto the street, and then I called Duane and told him, oh, I recognized it. I figured it out. And so then after I said that, a truck pulled up down the street, and so I had to go over there, and it was Duane and Rebisar. I climbed in the back seat, and then I got the impression that they were taking me away from all my personal situations and all these kind of funny things and whatever. And then after that, the view changed to where I saw Rebisar floating in the sky, and we were standing right in front of each other, like not above or below, just sort of in front of each other. And he was in an orange spacesuit with kind of like the dome around his head, and his head was facing towards me, but his eyes were looking straight down. Even though I couldn't see below, I was just looking at him. His eyes were looking straight down, and he had a very strong lavender field around him. It was like a flame, the way it was moving and undulating and swirling around him. It was this nice shade of lavender. So just wanted to share that.
Well, that's pretty far out, Jeremy. Yes, those are, we see things like that on Netflix. That's really cool. Thank you. Yeah, so again, there's the idea, and also what he's referring to there. So, you know, he's in the spacesuit, and he's looking down at the ground. So again, it's using your awareness to see what's going on and figure these things out. So that's really cool. Thank you so much. That's part of the great witness adventure here with Kevin and everybody else as people step up and share something, these viewpoints. And as you're sharing the experience, other people have that opportunity to see what's taking place because they have an objective view of that, just like watching a movie. So, and it's so cool. Thank you, Jeremy, for having the courage to share and be here. Thank you.